So moving on to our next speaker, I want to cue up the PowerPoint. So intelligence analyst Chelsea Clarke has been tremendously generous with her time over the last 9 months that I met her. I've had a number of questions for her over the last, just this past year with respect to studies coming out of Colorado, trying to figure out where the truth begins and ends as it relates to information coming out of Colorado. And I know that the intelligence that's coming from Rocky Mountain HIDTA has been thoroughly scrutinized by both sides of the issue. And you will not, if you do any sort of internet searches on Rocky Mountain HIDTA, you're not going to find any misinformation that's been disseminated through Rocky Mountain HIDTA. It has been fact-checked, it has been vetted, and there has been absolutely no errors found in their data collection. And so it's tremendously helpful in analyzing this information. And I know that when Ms. Clarke comes up here, she's going to talk about some of the misinformation coming out of Colorado and what Rocky Mountain HIDTA has done to fact check some of that information. So at this time I want to welcome Ms. Chelsea Clarke.
Well, thank you all for hanging in there with me after lunch and the second to last presentation. At least I'm not John Redmond and have to go very last, but I appreciate those of you who are still here. I'm sure you were all very good students and listened exactly to what I asked you to do yesterday. Went home, downloaded our report, read it thoroughly last night. So we'll just fly through some of this data because I know you guys are already going to be experts on it as well. But no, we're excited to be able to be here and to represent Rocky Mountain HIDTA and the information that we want to share with you. Again, this is data in our report that none of it is our own. It's all collected from other sources, and we want to provide it as educational means to anyone and everyone who will look at it. What we're going to briefly go through today is just Drug Policy 101. I know that sounds thrilling, but it's quick, I promise. Arguments for and against legalization, again, kind of a repeat of what I went over yesterday. And then the marijuana impact. What is actually happening in Colorado? What are we seeing beyond what Jim just showed you as far as actual investigations and how the landscape kind of is? I'm going to show you a brief show of our some of our data in all the different categories and areas that we look into. Hopefully maybe we'll have time for questions, we'll see. First of all, I want to throw this out there. Has the war on drugs been a failure? This is something that was already talked about a couple times yesterday. People say the war on drugs has been a failure. They throw that around like it's fact. That's just something that's repeated. Well, if something is a failure, what does that mean? What would it take to be seen as a success? Well, first of all, we agree that the term war on drugs is an absolutely terrible term. Should have never been used in the first place, because when you're talking about a war, you expect there to be a winner, a loser, and some sort of end date, and it all to be over. Well, when you're dealing with something like drugs and human behavior, that's never going to completely go away. You're never going to be able to completely eliminate drug use from our society. So in turn, really what's the goal? Well, the goal is to limit the number of people using drugs. So really what we're talking about, a better way of discussing this, is our nation's drug policy and whether that's been a success or a failure. And again, the purpose of this drug policy is to limit the number of people using. You will not be able to completely bring it down to zero, but you want to limit it as much as you can. Again, there's this idea that who cares about drug use? It's someone's own personal right and choice to use drugs and to put that in their body. So why does it matter? Why are we telling people what they can and can't do? Drug use is a victimless crime. We hear that constantly. Well, first of all, that's not true. There are actually 4 different categories of victims that we talk about. The user themselves. Often, they end up becoming addicted to this substance. Most of them do not start taking a substance, whether it's heroin, methamphetamine, marijuana, any of it, expecting to become addicted. That's not the goal. But it happens quite often, right? We know this happens. So the user themselves, the family and friends of the victim, right? Often there's so many different ways that people are impacted by use in someone's life that they know. We all know someone who has been addicted to drugs or has had drugs impact their life in a negative way. It's that broad. Every single one of us in this room would have someone that they could name. The victim of crimes, the connection and the nexus between drug use and crimes, as Jim just showed us with marijuana alone, it's undeniable. When people do drugs, it impairs their mental ability and makes them do things that they may not normally do under a clear head in normal circumstances. So absolutely, the connection between people that commit crimes and then the victim of those is absolutely connected to drugs. And then lastly, taxpayers. Even if none of those categories impacted you in any way, we are all still paying about $700 a year for this drug problem and drug use. I don't know about you guys, but I can think of several other ways I would like to spend $700. But we are all each individually as taxpayers paying that per year. Again, Jim just went through these. These are 3 victims, particularly of marijuana. So first of all, not only can you say marijuana drug use is a victimless crime, these are 3 individuals who were absolutely impacted by drug use. But also I want to point out one thing in regards to the young 19-year-old that Jim mentioned who hallucinated after eating an edible, jumped out of a 6-story building. The marijuana industry in Colorado says marijuana did not kill this young man. The impact from a 6-story fall killed him. That's the difference. So what are the factors that affect the rate of drug use? Well, Mr. Redmond talked about this a little bit yesterday. Price, availability, perception of risk, and public attitude. He describes his slightly different. I think he said the 3 A's. We bring ours down into these 4 categories. But think about it this way. We're going to take you through just briefly our 2 drugs that we're the most confident and familiar with, right? Our 2 legal ones, alcohol and tobacco. Well, alcohol, the price, sure, it ranges all over, but you can get alcohol very cheaply. It's available everywhere. It's in this convention center, I'm sure. It was available last night from CNOA. It's everywhere. It's in our homes. It's a part of daily life, right? The perception of risk with alcohol use is generally very low. We all accept that if you drink too much and you go out on the roads, that there's a chance that you could hurt yourself or someone else. Yes, but if you do low levels of use or you're responsible and don't binge drink and things like that, every one of us here, believes that it's not really going to hurt us. Everyone drinks, it's a part of it. And that goes into public attitude. It's accepted across our society, right? In all states, across the nation, across the world, alcohol is very accepted. So what does that in turn lead to? Alcohol is our most used substance in this country. Over 50% of people in this country use alcohol. Most of them use it responsibly, but yes, some don't use it responsibly. Well, what about tobacco? The price of tobacco has been largely driven up, especially from where it used to be, several years ago. The availability has dropped dramatically. It used to be just passed out in restaurants and bars, and although I did not have public experience or personal experience with it, I've heard of times when cigarettes were even available in vending machines. I'm dating myself, easily accessed. No, it's not. Now you have to go to the special counter in the grocery line to get your cigarettes. It's much more restricted. Perception of risk. People in general accept the medical risks associated with tobacco use. Kevin Sabet talked about it yesterday. 70% more likely to develop lung cancer if you smoke tobacco. Absolutely, we believe that. We believe if you use tobacco products, you're likely to develop cancer or emphysema, and you're a very high risk of developing those. And public attitude. Again, Kevin talked about that. It's no longer cool for our youth, really, to be smoking tobacco, to use cigarettes, and we have kind of as a society turned away from this, You can no longer use it in your hotel rooms, you can't use it in restaurants, you have to use it certain places outside, and if people walk through and have to walk through a cloud of smoke, you kind of get a look. It's a social stigma, it's no longer accepted. So what's been happening is we have taken our nation's drug policy and applied that to tobacco use. And as a result, we have seen tobacco use drop dramatically. It went from over 50% use, just like alcohol, to around 25% use. So again, what is considered a success for our drug policy? Well, according to the latest survey on drug use and health, only 10% of Americans use illegal drugs. 25% use tobacco and 52% use alcohol. So another way of looking at that, 90% of Americans do not use illegal drugs. Now, I don't know about you guys, and I was one of those stuck-up students who always strove for extra credit and 100%, but 90% in almost every school is an A, right? So that sounds like a great job to me. So how dare people tell and say to our law enforcement, our treatment providers, everyone involved in the drug community, that the war on drugs, the nation's drug policy, has been a failure, because that's absolutely been a success. You just saw this from Jim. We like to look at it in a different way. This right now shows the number of legal users versus the number of illegal users. Well, with all the problems we know associated with alcohol, the drunk driving, how it impacts crime, how it impacts family life, everything associated with it, the social costs, wouldn't we absolutely be celebrating if we could get the number of alcohol and tobacco users down to the number of our illegal drug users? That would change our society huge. But instead, what we've decided to do, what we're looking at doing, and what we've done in Colorado, is move the highest category of illegal drug users over to the legal side. And as we just looked at with drug policy, whenever you take away drug policy, which is what we've done in Colorado, use is going to 100% increase in these categories. So keep that in mind. Marijuana is going to continue to grow even higher. I'm not going to read these to you. You can briefly look at them, but again, we went through all of these yesterday. These are a lot of the arguments for legalization. These are what they told us in our state. This is kind of the same rhetoric they'll bring to every other state. You'll hear these same arguments. And then the arguments against legalization are that you will have marijuana-related traffic fatalities increased, use among youth and adults because of taking away drug policy, people involved in drug treatment, diversion for unintended purposes and to unintended individuals, and impacts and costs for public health and safety will far outweigh any revenue that you're able to bring in from this product. Well, let's look at what's actually happening in Colorado, right? That's what I'm here to hopefully tell you. What was that? Starbucks, right? Yeah. Close. That was Starbuds ganja, right? That's the one on the left. The one on the right is Starbucks coffee. This was actually one of the dispensary's logos that opened up just down the street from the University of Denver. Now, aside from glaring copyright infringement, I don't know how they got away with this. The purpose of this was for a couple reasons, I think. First of all, they're piggybacking off a very successful company, right? Maybe somebody thinks they're going to get a cup of coffee, they wander in, and maybe I'll just buy some marijuana instead. Who knows? Think they'll get confused. Second, really what I think is more important is the idea is they're trying to normalize this idea of marijuana use and marijuana dispensaries and shops. They're attaching it to something that we're all very familiar with. We're all familiar with the Starbucks logo and products, and they are associating that with this. Now, speaking of Starbucks, you've heard this referred to a couple times. This gives you a perspective of Colorado. The number of recreational marijuana shops, as of January, this has increased to over 500 since then, but was 424 compared to McDonald's and Starbucks. Keep in mind that was from 2 years. Starbucks and marijuana have been around for a long time. This number was as of shops opening January 1st, 2014. That's how quickly this has happened. And it's growing even more. And the number of medical marijuana dispensaries. So what is this data actually saying? What is happening in Colorado? We like to look at the numbers, the facts. Jim touched on this. There are 3 distinct eras that we kind of talk about in Colorado. We legalized medically in 2000, but as Jim pointed out, it wasn't until that medical commercialization with some laws that came through, with some judges that made rulings that said that caregivers could give to as many people as they wanted then, and dispensaries started popping up and opening up. And that's when medical marijuana was commercialized in our state, and then legalization. A lot of people think of legalization in Colorado as 2014. Because we voted on this in 2012, we were actually legal as of 2013. It just wasn't until 2014 that the retail shops actually opened. So these are the three eras to keep in mind as we're talking about this data. Impaired driving and fatalities. Another thing I want to just mention briefly is data can get kind of boring just looking at numbers and statistics and facts and things like that. Something that's really good to keep in mind, and we remind ourselves all the time, that's not just a number that you're looking at. That's a person's life. That's an individual that this number is representing. And it really drives it home. We've had people tell us that our numbers aren't high enough. They're not impressive enough. The difference is not big enough. It's not statistically significant. Well, to that one person or their family, I would argue that that number is absolutely statistically significant. This is an accident that occurred in Colorado. Both drivers were driving impaired by THC. They crashed. Both individuals perished in the crash. They were both killed. The car with the blue tarp on it, she had her two twin 3-year-old boys in the back. Now, they did survive that day, but they survived without their mother. And that is absolutely going to impact the rest of their lives. So this is the number of statewide traffic deaths. We were decreasing overall as a state, but in the last couple of years we have started increasing again. The numbers for decreasing could be road conditions, car safety, things like that. And we're not saying that overall traffic deaths, you can't relate that 100% to marijuana, but again, we show you the trends. The trends are what's happening over long periods of time. These are the traffic deaths that were related to marijuana. Now, we're not saying these traffic deaths were absolutely caused by marijuana, because you can't say that. Nor, if this was talking about alcohol, could you absolutely say that the traffic death was caused by alcohol. They could have been high on marijuana, they could have been drunk, and they could have been texting. Who knows? But these are cases where the toxicology came back and they were positive for marijuana, for THC, and things like that. This is another case I want to talk about. This just happened this last year. 8-year-old girl was riding her bike home from school with her dad. She was going across the crosswalk and a truck turned into her, hit her, and killed her. Now, that's devastating for a number of reasons. The 8-year-old girl was innocent, was with her father, was just riding home. But think for a minute about this driver. The driver was positive for THC. The driver was a 20-year-old individual, a 20-year-old male. He thought he had just hit the curb. He didn't know he had hit anyone until her father started flagging him down. He was a former high school state athlete for wrestling. He won the state for wrestling. He was just starting in college. He had a bright future ahead of him. He then made the decision to partake of marijuana and get behind the wheel. And he wasn't even above our limit. We have a 5 nanogram limit. He was positive when they took his blood, with Marilyn Hustis talked about how quickly that drops, but when they got his blood, he had 1.5 nanograms in his system. However, we do have a bit of a workaround in our law to where if that's combined with the officer's testimony on his impaired abilities at the scene and how he acted impaired and seemed impaired, then they will bring that in and charge him with this marijuana-related fatality. So not only do we have a little girl that is no longer with us, but that young man, his life is absolutely over as well too. And I bet you if you went and asked him if he would do it all over again, I bet you he would give a different answer. This is the number of operators positive for marijuana. People that tell us marijuana is not impairing. It's not impairing to smoke marijuana and drive. It's less dangerous than alcohol. Well, of those involved in traffic fatalities, 1/3 of them had nothing but marijuana in their system. That's it. And then another almost third had marijuana and alcohol. And again, as Marilyn Hustis started talking to us about, the combination just increases your impaired ability as well. Well, that's being reactive, right? Well, what about impaired driving? Impaired driving is a different beast because that is being proactive. Something in that person's driving doesn't look right. There's something that causes the officer to want to pull the individual over and see what's going on because their driving seems erratic. This is the number of DUIDs in Colorado. This is our Colorado State Patrol, right, for 2015. Now, they've only started collecting this data in 14 and 15, unfortunately. We don't have baseline data to go back to. But as of 2015, 77% of all DUIDs that Colorado State Patrol gave out involved marijuana. And of that, over half of them only involved marijuana. And again, there's a reason that the officer pulled them over. Something about their driving didn't look right. So this isn't just reacting to a situation and finding out someone had marijuana in their system. This is actively going out and seeing what's causing this person to drive so erratically. Then looking at a smaller subset, this is our Larimer County Sheriff's Office over 3 years, and their percent of DUIDs involving marijuana. They have increased each year over the years. Now, marijuana use in youth, this is important because like I mentioned yesterday, the proponents say we're going to have such tightly restricted, regulated markets that youth use will not increase. It's not going to get to the youth any further. Well, this is what we're seeing in Colorado. The Colorado national average is above, the Colorado average is above the national average. We're actually 74% higher than the national average. And we increased 20% during a time when the nation decreased 4%, right? This is what I talked to you about yesterday. We are that green line on the far right. We are now #1 in the nation for youth use, right? This is Colorado average. This is the national average. And just for your comparison, there's California. Now, yes, you are higher up on the list than you might want to be, but just know we came from that. You're about #10 now. We were #14 in 2006 before our medical commercialization actually occurred, and we have just climbed up the ranks ever since then. So, yes, you are a medical state. You can see the medical are the red, the legal and medical are the green, and then the blue are the non. So another visualization of this is this chart. And to me, this is the most clear depiction of anything that legalization of marijuana at any stage affects the use in youth and adults and anything. The blue is non, the red is medical, and the green is both. So each stage of legalization that comes across to states, it shows increased use. And this is Colorado, same trend pattern for our 3 eras and our 3 time frames. About a 20% increase each time we legalize the process of marijuana. This is the percent of total suspensions. It has gone down in the last couple years. Colorado has decided to make some legal changes, and they no longer have a zero tolerance policy for drug use. The idea is to not have students that are already on drugs kicked out of school and being expelled and suspended. They want to keep them in school rather than go through these. However, I will say, as of 2015 and 16, Colorado is now mandated to separate marijuana violations from drug violations from the rest of them. And that's the first year we've done it. But of total suspensions, over 63% of total suspensions for drugs were just because of marijuana violations. And again, because of expulsions, over 58%, which I'm skipping through to show you this, were simply from marijuana. Again, and this is just the first baseline year of this data. Not all schools are reporting it or knowing how to collect it, so this number could go up. We'll see how it looks in the next couple of years. This was the first trial year. We as Rocky Mountain HIDTA decided on our own to do a survey of Colorado school resource officers. We look at all the national surveys, we look at the state surveys, but we really wanted to talk to people who were on the ground level in the schools and see what their impression of use was in the schools since marijuana was legalized. Well, it has been one of the most eye-opening things we've done. First of all, the predominant marijuana violations, students under the influence during school hours. That is #1. Second to being in possession of marijuana or marijuana paraphernalia. In the schools every day, high or have marijuana on them, sometimes selling all these different varieties. This is absolutely what the school resource officers are seeing on the ground. This is what they're encountering. Also, in regard to student marijuana source, #1 is from a friend who obtained it legally. So that seems to contradict the idea that this legal market will not get to our students. I know that's probably shocking to all of you, but it is. And the black market, that's number 2. So that hasn't gone away either. Those are still the predominant ways that students are getting marijuana in the state of Colorado. This is also from the School Resource Officer Association. This is last year's most recent data. I used to use a slide from the Colorado School Counselors Association. We did a survey with them the year before. Our boss, my boss, Tom Gorman, who's very politically correct, very concerned with saying the right thing, not at all, people who know him. He knew that we talked to law enforcement, and he figured, well, people will say that's what law enforcement says, SROs in the school. He wanted to hear, in his words, what the squishy feelies would say. So we talked to the school counselors to see what their impression was and see what they were seeing. Well, their results came back almost identical in percentages of what they were seeing in the schools, as well matching the school resource officers. However, when we went to them this year and asked if we could do a follow-up on the survey and survey their counselors again, their association told us that they had elected not to participate in our survey anymore. Possibly related or unrelated, they have also applied for a grant money that is provided by the marijuana industry. They did not want to come across as being against legalization or anti-legalization, just by giving us their opinions of what's happening in the school. So we no longer have their data. We have it for the 1 year, which is in our report, but not beyond. The college-age marijuana use, again, that's important, because like I talked to you about yesterday, people don't want to send their students, pay for them to go to school if they're just going to become potheads, right? That's not the idea. Well, 31% is our Colorado average for 18 to 25-year-olds. We're 62% higher than the national average. And again, we're increasing at a rate higher than the national average again. So, what does that mean? Well, we're now first in the nation again. Well, not again, we're first in the nation for the first time, but for 18 to 25-year-olds as well. And this just shows you the national average compared to Colorado. And yes, again, we've been above the national average, but look how we've pulled away. As we went through commercialization and now legalization, we are separating ourselves even further as we go along. Same with adult use. Why does adult use matter? Why does it matter if adults that are over 26, according to this data, are using marijuana? How does that impact anything? Well, first of all, who do our kids look to when they're looking at use? They look at what's normalized, what they've seen in their homes, what is occurring every day around them, and then also, if all adults were able to just use responsibly, we wouldn't have the things like the impaired driving going up, the traffic fatalities going up. So they're absolutely related. And our use, as we've talked about, when you legalize something, you expect the use rate to go up. So now we're over 12% for Colorado, and keep in mind, this 12%, that is lower than the youth rate that I showed you. So youth are still, the youth, the 12 to 17-year-olds, are still using at a higher rate than the adults that we legalized it for. And Colorado is now first in the nation for current marijuana use among adults. Same with the 18 to 25-year-olds. We were above, but we have dramatically pulled apart from the rest of the country as far as adult use. Emergency rooms and hospitalizations, those are also increasing, right? From 2011 to 2014, we're seeing 20% increases each year. These are rates likely related to marijuana. This was a definition put together by the Department of Health themselves. This likely related definition means that that's probably the reason why someone was going into the ER. It's not just, they went in for a different problem and it showed up that they had marijuana in their system as well. This is that marijuana came up in one of the first 3 diagnosis codes from the doctor. So it's a strong causal contributing factor to why they're in the ER in the first place. Same definition for hospitalizations. Again, you can see the increases each year, and these are rates per 100,000. All of this data is in our report, that's why I'm kind of flying through this. Marijuana and poison control cases. These are kids 6 to 17, right? And after commercialization to legalization, we had over 100% increase. Now some people may say, oh, 25 isn't that big, 53 aren't that big numbers. Well, it absolutely is to those children and to their parents. We're having children presenting to our Colorado Children's Hospital with very serious conditions. Some were having to be admitted to the ICU because this marijuana is so toxic, and how it affected their little bodies is they were having respiratory failure. So it absolutely is a big deal. Beyond this, children ages 0 to 5 years old. And what's most alarming in things like this, those kids are not going after marijuana because they know what marijuana is and they are trying to get high or see what it feels like. These are kids that are eating edible products, candy, things lying around the house that they think are safe, they think look normal, they think look appetizing. They have no idea the potential harm that can be imparted to them because of this. Our diversion on the highways. Washington talked about this yesterday. We're very good at growing marijuana in Colorado. We've gotten very good at it, and we have a lot of it, and we send it all across the country and even internationally. This has just been estimated by interdiction experts on the highways that this represents maybe 10% of what actually gets through. The number of seizures that they make every day. This is random traffic stops where they pull someone over for a traffic violation and subsequently find marijuana products. This is the amount of pounds from coming just from Colorado that is increasing. And again, similar to Washington, which you don't see Washington and Oregon on there because the flow of illegal drugs is towards the East Coast, so you guys are pretty safe from us. Pretty safe. But again, anything east of us, we'll ship it to you. We'll send it to you. And speaking of shipping, we like to say, hey, if it fits, it ships. Just like their slogan, because that's absolutely what it is. People are putting marijuana in the United States Postal Office. That you would think if you were conducting illegal activity, you wouldn't use a federally funded agency. But a lot of people still are because so much of it is still getting through. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service officers are doing a phenomenal job. The fact that they're catching this much of it is great. But there's just so much going through beyond that. It's hard to keep up with. And this is not even including FedEx, UPS, any of the other commercialized industries that I would personally choose. I would think they would be safer. But this is through the U.S. Postal. And again, this is the pounds. Look at that from 2014 to 15. The pounds of marijuana from Colorado that were confiscated, being shipped across the country. We've heard a couple of presentations already about the Extraction Lab Explosions. These are just some pictures, again, of what's happened in Colorado. I will say one good thing that came out of what we've done is this kind of blew up overnight, and we went from no extraction explosion to quite a few. Significant numbers to our burn units. People took note of that, and our cities did get on board of ordinances and banning extraction methods using the combustible products. And then our state caught on, and they also did this. So it does still occur, and another problem is there's no central tracking for this data. However, in Colorado, the number of explosions we have has dramatically decreased, which is a positive thing. Our police, our fire officers, and ultimately our state and lawmakers did get all over this. And that absolutely helped in bringing this down. All for this, right? All for this little bit of BHO, that butane honey oil, doesn't seem worth it to me. This is one of the products. Again, that's some resin wax. This is one of the product packages in our stores. This is very interesting to me because the medical warning for this is that, and this is a medical product, is the product contains medical marijuana, was produced with regulatory oversight for health, safety, or FC. There may be health risks associated with the consumption of the product. So your medical marijuana may pose medical risks to you if you use it. That does not seem like a good idea to me. And if you look at the contaminant data at the bottom of that, you have butanes, heptanes, benzane, toluene, hexane. I don't know about you, but none of that sounds like a good idea to put into your body. And this was our number. Again, it went from practically nothing and nothing overnight to significant numbers, explosions, injuries, all of the above, but we have taken care of it. We also focus on a lot of related information that's happened in Colorado. We like to call these unintended consequences, things that no one even thought of until they happen there. You have the chemicals used in these grows, both outdoor and indoor grows, the electrical and water consumption, not as bad as California, but absolutely Colorado struggles each year with drought-like conditions, and I don't know how I can be restricted to watering twice a week and the amount of water that they're able to use in their grows every day for their marijuana plants. Does not seem right to me, and my lawn dies, but that's what they decided on. Well, also, again, like you guys, thank you. We get a lot from you, as Jim Gerhardt pointed out. The federal grows that they talked about yesterday, well, there was chatter that they picked up that said, well, we're going to take our grows and move them to Colorado because it's a much more relaxed environment there. And even if we get caught, it's just like a slap on the wrist. So let's just ship over there. So your guys' grows, down to the exact trash, the exact camp setup, how they set up these grows, have now been put over in Colorado. And yes, even in our mountains, they're able to do these grows quite well, even in those high altitudes. So it's impacting our federal lands, and the cleanup costs thousands and thousands of dollars to try and get this environment back to what it was before. Money laundering happens every day. That's a part of this industry. Prostitution, we have examples of individuals bringing their girls from different states to Colorado and accepting payment of marijuana for the girls' services, or straight up people setting up these prostitution rings within Colorado surrounding marijuana, because it makes things a little more relaxed, and if people are uncomfortable with the situation, it helps out a little bit more. So absolutely, marijuana and prostitution, it's occurring every day. The transients, the homeless, Jim talked about that. It is a growing problem every day. And even the Denver mayor is saying that they're here for illegal marijuana. This is just one of the consequences we're going to have to deal with. I'm not comfortable with saying that. I don't like that. I am also a Colorado native, and I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate my mayor of Denver just saying this is just something that we have to deal with. It's come along. I don't think that's acceptable. And then the home grows that people have talked about for forever. We're going to just briefly go into how these are impacting Colorado. This is a beautiful house in Colorado Springs, little 3-car garage, lovely place. This is what it looked like after. Now, this was not from a BHO explosion. This was from a home grow fire. And thank goodness, I know you in California can especially relate. Look at when this picture was taken, what time of year. Look at all the trees, the grass, the shrubs, everything around. Thank goodness this fire occurred in the winter, because we have had some serious wildfires down around the Colorado Springs area, and this absolutely could have been the next one. That's what the DEA agents said who are investigating this. There was a potential for just absolute fire to spread across the city. Well, I'm no electrical expert, but even I can tell that's a bad idea. This is where the fire started. It's because they were rigging this up. They didn't want anyone to know they had a home grow going on in here. So they rigged up their own electrical system, and it didn't work. Also, they are destroying these homes. Same home, all that black you see, that's mold. And I don't know for sure in this case, but what we're also happening a lot in Colorado is people coming in and renting homes. And then when the homeowner gets this, insurance is not covering this. They're not covering the marijuana fires, the marijuana mold, things like that. So if you're a homeowner and you didn't know that there was marijuana being grown in your rental property, you're out of luck. That all falls on you financially. So it's absolutely impacting people and their financial status. And then again, think if this was your neighbor. Think if you were right down the road from this, how that can impact you. A couple scenarios we'll go through briefly to show you how out of control this is. Over 107,000 medical marijuana patients. About 8,200 of them have recommendations for the 50 to 99 plant count. That's our high plant count. And again, this has to do with our medical marijuana, but it could also apply to our legalized, because like Jim said, if you're growing for other individuals, you can have up to this amount as well, as long as you justify it. So if these 8,200 patients each grow 50 plants, that's the low end of the 50 to 99 plant count, that's over 410 marijuana plants between them, right? The entire state of Colorado, licensed medical recreational industry, currently says they have 758,000 plants in their tracking system. So these 8,200 patients have about half of what our entire state does. And if 8,200 patients harvest 1 pound per plant, which we've heard is the very, very low end, that means you're not a great grower, every 90 days, that's the growing cycle, then they are harvesting 1,640,000 pounds of marijuana per year. Just those 8,200 medical marijuana patients, right? So no wonder there's a black market. No wonder we can ship it to the rest of the country. There's abundance of marijuana. Second scenario, 5 people move from Florida to Colorado and rent 3 houses. Why do we say that? That's happening. We're having an influx of Cubans moving to Colorado, setting up these very intensive grows. All 5 individuals, right after they get there, obtain a medical recommendation to grow 99 plants, right? So now they can legally grow up to 495 plants between them. With, again, at least 1 pound per plant per cycle, that's the low end, that's 495 pounds every 90 days. So they can do about 1,980 pounds per year, just under 2,000 pounds per year. Well, in Colorado, the low end, $2,000 is what you can expect to spend on a pound of marijuana. So in just a year, these people can be making $4 million. The 5 of them with their 3 houses and what they're growing. But if they're really entrepreneurs, they'll know they can ship it to the East Coast and it'll double. So in 1 year, these 5 people can be making $8 million just on these home grows. Again, other things we're seeing in the home grows, we're seeing it pre-packaged. I don't know about you, but if you're using it for yourself, do you have to package it individually in little baggies like that? The amount of weapons that we're seeing being seized in these grows is increasing. Jim touched on. The violence associated with this is increasing. Again, cash, this individual measuring that plant, he's 6 feet tall. He's reaching over his head to measure those. And then, oh yes, there's children living in the house as well. Another component. All reported crimes in Denver, I just want to touch on this. This is Colorado's statewide budget. That windfall of marijuana tax revenue, that's that little red sliver you're seeing. 0.5%. Yes, over $100 million sounds like a lot of money, but in comparison to a state's budget and what can actually be done with that money, it doesn't do that much. The schools are not seeing it. It's not making any big difference for anyone, and our costs associated with what we're having to use this for is increasing each and every day. Over $1 million being spent now to protect the 16th Street Mall because of the dangers associated with it from our governor. The meeting planners, I mentioned to you guys about the Visit Denver, our convention center. Over 49% of people now, because of homeless, youth, panhandling, safety, cleanliness, and drugs, have a negative perception of Denver and say they will not host conferences there. Denver is losing visitors and valuable convention business as a result of these overall safety or perception of safety issues. Another client feedback for this meeting, I will never locate here again. I felt much safer in downtown New York, Philly, Seattle, and Chicago. This client chose to contract with the Hyatt Regency in San Antonio. I would like to share why Denver dropped off his list. And then he states that he's done a lot of business in Colorado, and he is absolutely disappointed to see how things have changed in the city since marijuana was legalized. Outside individuals seeing what's happening to Denver. This is just to show you, Colorado consumption of alcohol, it's increased since legalization. So it's not a choice, it's not one or the other. We've seen them both go up. You've seen a lot about edibles, so I'll just fly through this really quick. Who thinks that gummy bears on the left have THC? Who thinks the gummy bears on the right have THC? The truth is I can't remember, but that's the point. If I can't remember and you can't tell, how's anyone else going to know? How's your child going to know? That's the problem. They make them to look like regular products for a purpose. You have brownies, cookies, lemon bars. this is a 100 milligram cookie cut up into 10 milligram pieces. I don't know about you, but I am never going to eat one of those little 10 triangles, ever. That's a cookie and it should be eaten all at once. More products, we have THC infused sugar cubes, we have patches, we have granola, we have people putting the sugar cubes into energy drinks. And then lastly, my time is up, so I will just leave you with these images. Again, this is all called discreet vaping. If it's legal, if you're okay to do it, if you're doing it in the right place, which is your house, why do you have to have a bracelet that's a vape? Why do you have to have the hoodie strings of your sweatshirt be a vape? Why do you have to have an asthma inhaler be a vape pen? These are all products that youth can use or people can use in places where they shouldn't be using this product. iPhone cases are now vape pens. And lastly, why we do this. This is no self-funding on our part. People say, well, you're law enforcement based, you're just doing this to promote yourself, to get funding. Well, first of all, I don't get any more money if marijuana is legal versus if it's illegal. And I promise you, in dealing with all drugs, there's plenty of crime and plenty to deal with, whether marijuana is legal or not. We believe in educating the public. We believe in letting everyone know what's going on so you can make an educated decision for yourself. This is what's happening in Colorado. Is this something that you want to bring into your community as well? Please go to our report and download it if you haven't already. That's just a summary slide. But again, I have my information if any of you have any questions. Otherwise, please look at the report, please see all the data, and let us know if there's anything else you need.